There are different safety agencies who have set up rules and regulations about the laboratories. The most important and popular one is OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and Environmental Protection Agency. And then there are local agencies as well who set up rules for the management of the laboratories, the waste disposal, safety regulations, and they issue certifications for the laboratory as well, that any particular laboratory in a university is certified to be safe and following all the regulations set up by that particular agency. Okay. Training or learning about the laboratory is by far the most important aspect of safety.
Yes, sir. We are on the first page of the introduction. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Now it's changing.
Yes, it's being changed now. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, so we were somewhere talking about setup of the safety rules and some agencies that we talked about, that Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, and Environmental Protection Agency. Then we were somewhere here that importance of training and know-how about different aspects of any particular laboratory. The training not only reduces the loss of materials and injury, but also increases students' efficiency and awareness. So the training depends upon the purpose of the laboratory. Either it is an academic lab or research lab or a quality control lab in an industry and so on. So preventing the hazards and increasing the awareness is the goal of every institution. Let me then show. Okay. So who is in charge of safety? This is a usual question that in any university or at a place, who is in charge? Actually, everyone on campus is in charge of the safety. The student is responsible for participation in the trainings, comprehending the information and utilize that information. Whereas the instructor or the supervisor is in charge of providing proper and effective awareness. So this is not the responsibility of a particular office in the university, but it is the responsibility of all the participants in a particular lab. So let's talk about laboratory. By definition, what is laboratory? Laboratory is a place which is equipped for experimental study in science. This is one of the statements that can define a laboratory. Or we can say a place providing opportunity for experimentation. Or we can also narrate it like a place for testing and analyzing. So this is a general term used for a laboratory. Let's get started, and we see the first thing, working in a laboratory can be a very exciting experience. Students are usually excited to go to the laboratory because they will have now opportunity to do the things that they have been studying in the books. But it also poses risks and hazards that a traditional classroom does not have. So it is always important to know about the surroundings, our surroundings in the laboratory. Know where are, for example, about the exits, about the fire extinguishers and other sources. So it is usual that on the first day of the laboratory, the teacher goes over the emergency action plan, including the escape routes and procedures. It is also recommended to be aware of the fire extinguisher. Very important. Fire extinguisher location in your laboratory. It is very important to know about them. Then, campus personnel are highly encouraged not to fight fires by themselves. Always inform the responsible office, notify that fire department, do not wait any longer than necessary to call. Time is of real essence whenever there is any incident. You should know where the fire alarm is. Is in the proximity of your laboratory? Is it right down the hall or in the stair wall? Is there a fire? A quick response is the best response. The fire safety drill is usually done in the universities, even in the schools and in different industries. So safety drill is an essential part in the lab safety. Again, many laboratories contain different hazardous substances. So what is a hazardous substance actually? It is defined as any material or a substance that poses a physical or health hazard. So this includes both chemicals and moving parts. There are differences between a physical hazard and a health hazard. What is the difference between the two? A health hazard has the following characteristics. A health hazard is a carcinogenic compound. It is toxic. It is irritant. It can be corrosive, sensitizer, hepatotoxin, nephrotoxin, or neurotoxin. Different chemicals can have such characteristics. Whereas a physical hazard has the following characteristics. It can be an explosive compound, highly reactive, flammable, oxidizing in nature, a compressed gas in sometimes in cylinders, combustible liquids. It can be very unstable or a very reactive compound. It reacts with water. So these are the physical hazards. So we need to classify that what material we are dealing with. It is really important to know where are some important safety equipments installed in our laboratory. Sometimes these are shared between 2 or 3 consecutive laboratories. Sometimes each lab has it. It is called eye wash station and safety shower. So these are two things which are mandatory to be installed in every chemistry and biology laboratory. So this is the picture of an eye wash station, just in case a chemical or any other reagent splashes into your eye and you need to wash your eyes quickly and immediately. This is the picture of this shower, the emergency shower. If there is any fire or spillage or something like that, this shower is located nearby in the laboratory or inside the laboratory.
Sorry to disturb you, sir. Your slides are not being changed.
Oh my God. Okay,
Yes.
Dr. Sabha, let me.
Yes, now it's okay.
You can see this way. Okay, I will not go to. When I go to the full slide, then I think it stops by
I would
somewhere.
suggest you to not stay on these
Okay,
slideshow.
okay, I will
Okay,
continue like
please.
this.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you,
Dr.
very
Sabha.
much.
Thank you. Okay, so we were talking about the surroundings of the laboratory, which we need to know the information about the surroundings. And in this regard, we talked about a couple of very important installations that we need to have inside the laboratories. One is the eye wash station and the safety shower. So eye wash station is a small device which is used to wash the eyes, just in case a liquid splashes into your eye or there is a particulate matter or something while working in the laboratory. So this is available. It can be used to wash the eyes immediately. Then we have, this is emergency shower. This is also available in the laboratories, used to, if there is a little bit of fire or splashing or spillage onto your clothes or something, you can always use this one installed in the laboratories. Fine. First aid kit is another very important component in the laboratory. If your lab has a first aid kit, we should know the location where it is found, and if there is some accident that happens which is more than the first aid kit needed, then you are recommended to go for the health service for further treatment. So this is another important aspect that you should know the location and availability of the first aid kit. Each laboratory also has a telephone in the designated area for use. Sometimes it is installed in the wall or sometimes it's placed in the instructor's bench. The emergency contact numbers are always posted near the phone in every laboratory on the university campus. So you should know the emergency numbers and the location of that emergency phone as well. Knowing that what kind of hazards are present in the laboratory is very important. As I told you in the beginning, that the hazards are determined by the purpose of the laboratory. A freshman laboratory means first year or first couple of semesters laboratories are academic laboratories are different as compared to the research laboratories or advanced academic laboratories which we use in the senior years. So based upon that, we can classify these labs. So each lab is faced with different type of hazards. So this could be exposure to the biological, chemical or radioactive materials. which may pose a variety of physical and or health hazards. So we will focus more on the chemical hazards because I believe that most of my audience is dealing with chemistry. So let's look at these hazards a little bit more. So chemicals can pose significant health hazards. Okay, they should be limited to the use under a properly working fume hood. And of course, the quantity that we need them, it should be definitely controlled. Especially in the academic laboratories, usually the students are involved in making solutions by using concentrated reservoirs. For example, acids are diluted. It's a very common practice in the academic laboratories. There are fumes which are released by, say, for example, ammonia. We use a lot in salt analysis and other purposes. So chemicals that can release hazardous fumes, which those always to be used under the fume hood. There should be a proper exhaust there, windows and so on in these laboratories. But sometimes by smelling those chemicals, some people get a major health threat. So they must be handled very carefully and disposed of properly as well. Okay. When a chemical is used in the laboratory, the hazards of that chemical must be communicated to the students. So whenever the faculty members are giving a brief demonstration about a particular experiment in an academic lab, or they are dealing with research graduates, research students with them, so they should, it is their duty to make the students aware of all the hazards that are related to the chemicals which are involved in that particular experiment. So according to this agency, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, a chemical hygiene plan, CHP, it is always required to relay information regarding the procedures, equipments, apparatus, personally protective equipment, and work practices that are capable of protecting students from health hazards. So this is a short document, few pages only, that has to be given to the students when they come to the laboratory. And for example, for one semester, they will be doing like 10 to 12 experiments in that semester. So all the chemicals involved in that, information regarding those chemicals, reactivity, their hazards, their other properties should be communicated to the students. So this is the job of the supervisor or the concerned instructor, to provide information which is contained in the chemical hygiene plan. Okay. Now we will summarize a little bit of the guidelines that have been established to minimize the hazards in a laboratory setting, in a lab setup. So it is very important to take responsibility of your actions. I'm talking to the students. I mean, the action of the student is very important. The seriousness in the laboratory is very important, and the irresponsible acts could have lasting future impacts on yourself and your health as well. So we will review now some of the responsible conduct in the laboratory setting. A few steps I would like to share with you. The lab attire. What should we wear when we have a lab day? Our dress code. So some of the recommendations are summarized here in this slide. That do not use the open-toed shoes, no shorts unless a lab coat is used. Please take care of restraining the long hairs or long beards when working with the hazardous materials, or especially with the flames. So long beards or long hair sometimes becomes very dangerous when the flame is on and you are also working on the bench, taking other chemicals or moving the test tubes or beakers and so on and so forth. There is another issue, you know, I'm working in Saudi Arabia these days, and here the local dress contains a long, you know, piece of cloth on their head. So they are very particular with that particular, and it is called shamah in their language, and it is very dangerous while working in the chemistry laboratory. So there are very strict rules for these students to remove that and then come into the laboratory, and they are not happy with that. Anyway, so if somebody have to study chemistry, they have to abide by these rules and regulation, remove that. And of course, beards becomes very dangerous sometimes while working with the flames, heating, and so on and so forth. So we really avoid Bunsen burners here. We really avoid Bunsen burner here. We try to use hot plate as much as possible. And the use of the personal protective equipment is also very important, like goggles or gloves. Sometimes respirators are also used, and masks are used sometimes in particular laboratory exercises. Personal habits play a large role in minimizing the hazards. The following measures must be taken. Do not eat, drink, smoke, chew gums in the laboratory. Not a good habit at all. Do not apply cosmetics. You know, these sprays or cosmetics contains volatile compounds which can catch fire easily. Do not change contact lenses while you are in the lab. Do not store food or any beverage in the refrigerator which is used to store chemicals in it. Do not mouth pipette. Always use a pipette filler. Wash hands before leaving the laboratory and after handling the contaminated material. So using the gloves is a good habit actually. Other protective equipments to be used depending upon the lab exercise or the research laboratory that you are working with. Usually research labs dealing with the organic chemistry need more protective equipments and more safety measures than any other lab. Dangling jewelry is another problem, like bracelets or necklace. Has to be very careful with that. Always leave your purses, backpacks, laptops, everything else in either in the classroom or in your locker. Do not bring them inside the lab. Never taste or try to taste any chemical or touch them with your bare hands. That can be detrimental if you do not have proper information about the hazardous impacts of that particular chemical. And be smarter for some practices, like never put water into the acid. Always do the reverse. Always put acid into the water. You know, when you mix acid with water, it's a highly exothermic reaction, and sometimes it becomes it becomes so exothermic that difficult to handle the temperature. Sometimes there is a splash or splatter when we are making a solution. So always add acid to the water and not the vice versa. Another thing we do a lot with the test tubes, doing salt analysis and other type of experimentation in chemistry laboratories. So never point the test tube at your face or anyone else's face while you are heating it. So there are sometimes, you know, heating a test tube might cause a sudden rise in the temperature for more volatile liquid, and it can splash. So therefore, using the safety goggle is always recommended, and the angle of the test tube while heating it is important. Some of the usual safe practices also that we can follow, that never use chipped or cracked glassware. This happens with us in our academic lab, especially when we have a big number of students handling them, and sometimes we have a cracked beaker or a cracked test tube or something. Try to avoid it as much as possible. Sometimes these china dishes that we use, they are cracked, and they can cause a short or small accident. So when working with the hazardous materials, always have a person nearby, and you working in the groups. Usually in academic labs we have big groups working together, but this happens in the research labs when a person is working alone, and we know that in our research laboratories students work day and night, and sometime in the late hours they are alone. So this can be a hazard as well. So always try to keep a friend or a co-worker with you while dealing with or doing some reactions, especially inorganic synthesis or organic synthesis when you are doing. Of course, keep the lab or your bench top neat and clean, and I'm sure this is the part of the experiment that when you finish, your bench top and your apparatus should be left clean and hand it over to the lab instructor and before you leave. And I'm sure this is the part of the assessment as well, that how tidy your experiment is. Always use these hazardous chemicals under a fume hood and biohazardous material under a biosafety cabinet. decontaminate whenever needed. So biology laboratories also, they have their own hazards. Sometimes they deal with some bacteria or some living organism and so on and so forth. So that safety must be taken care of. Okay, now knowledge about the materials that we use in the laboratory, different type of reagents. Sometimes we use different type of gases. Sometimes we use electrical equipment also to do some electrolysis experiments. So there are different types of equipments and materials that we use. Let's have a little bit about them, that how important it is to label it. So the labeling of almost everything which is available in the laboratory is really inevitable. The most dangerous substance is the one that has no label. So any container, a bottle, or even a small equipment which is not properly labeled is a very dangerous substance. Actually, it can pose a hazard. So labeling is very important. There are protocols of labeling as well, but simply speaking, the name of the material along with the concentration. If it is a solution of certain concentrated reagent, its concentration and name should be mentioned there, usually along with the temperature range at which it is stable. Then another thing that adds to our know-how about material is MSDS, which is Material Safety Data Sheet. Material Safety Data Sheet communicates the information which is really important regarding the hazards associated with chemicals and also with the biological agents. It is available on the net as well. It is in the form of a big book as well, but it is available so that you can just take those materials which are routinely used in the laboratories, and this can be either pasted on the walls or can be distributed to the students or shared the link with the students in which this information is available. So this shares the vital information about certain chemicals and biological agents. So even students can themselves look for MSDS for any particular material they are going to deal with. They can search it, and even these assignments are usually given to the students that look for the MSDS for these two reagents and materials and briefly write about them. So this type of practices are usually done to make the students aware of the hazards associated with a particular material. So when we know the characteristics about a substance, so it is easy to handle it then. So, and we can also devise precautionary measures to handle it. So if there is a spillage, for example, either on the surface of the lab bench top or on the skin of our hand, so this MSDS can supply you with the information needed for the first aid. So it's an important document and it contains a lot of information in it. Personal protective equipment. This is also very important to know about personal protective equipment. In the academic lab, it is not a big deal to provide the PPE to the students. Usually, this personal protective equipment starts from the gloves, the safety goggles, includes the lab coat, important, shoe cover sometimes, respirator. Usually respirator is used in the research laboratories when they are dealing with certain gases, and any other particular material made up of certain barriers between you and the hazardous materials that you encounter in the labs. So for a research lab, this can be very specific, but for an academic lab, it is general, which includes the gloves, the safety glasses, lab coats, and so on. So the knowledge about where the personally protective equipment is located is vital. The student should know that it is available in the drawers or in specific cabinet so that they can pick it up before every experiment. So definitely it will depend upon the experiment that they are going to perform that particular day. If there is a flammable or corrosive element or a chemical compound is involved in a particular experiment, so that particular day, it's the duty of the instructor to make sure that all the students are using a proper PPE to avoid any physical and or health problem. Okay, so this is the objective of course, the chemistry department and the authorities relevant to that, that there should not be any unpleasant incident happening in any academic or any research laboratory. Okay, when chemicals are being used, there is always a possibility of splashing. Splashing happens, and this is a common observation that splashing happens. How can we avoid it? Of course, by slow heating, sometimes by slow mixing. But of course, the students are not that expert in these things. They are learning. So these things definitely happen, and that makes it mandatory use of safety glasses, gloves, and respirators in certain situations. Okay, each lab should have a designated area for this personally protective equipment. It should be checked, actually. There is a logbook always kept with these PPE cabinets where the concerned department checks the working of this PPE and availability, the number of goggles, gloves, everything is in order, it is available. If it is not available, to make up the stock of these substances available for the use of the students. So always consider in advance what you will need when conducting the research. And actually, this is these days now mandatory, that whenever you write a proposal for a grant or a research grant, there is always a component in the budget about the safety equipment and safety measures that will be taken during the whole span of that particular project. So this is becoming a law now by these health agencies that look after the certification of the research laboratories and analytical laboratories as well. And now it is also becoming more and more important to get your laboratory certified, because it is now the requirement of many good journals. When you publish there, that they ask that, is your analytical laboratory certified by which agency? Have you ever taken a role in the competition of analytical measurements of SRM, standard reference materials, and so on? So such type of certifications are good and should be sought for while working on big research projects and so on. Waste management, the final component in the lab safety, is how to manage the waste generated. Yes, a lot of waste is generated especially in big universities where there is a big number of academic labs, research labs are working. So management of the waste is really important, and usually there is a separate department which is responsible for managing the waste. They pick up the waste, they categorize it, hazardous waste or the non-hazardous waste. Okay, so it's very important to dispose the wastes generated in the chemistry labs properly, because of the environmental reason and of course the health reasons. So as I just said, that waste can be classified into two main categories: hazardous and non-hazardous waste. So hazardous waste have the following characteristics by definition: that if some material is toxic, corrosive, it is ignitable, flammable, oxidizer in nature, so this will be counted as a hazardous waste. So it will be disposed into a separate container. Okay, we cannot just throw away every waste material into the sink. So there should be proper disposal containers. These certifying agencies look for these parameters in any laboratories. So hazardous waste must be disposed of through the EHS department or any designated office in any university. They have different arrangements. If you need to have a hazardous waste picked up, please contact the relevant office. Do not try to dispose it off by yourself, because the people who deal with the waste, they are trained for this, and let them do their job, and they will pick it up and they will dispose it off properly. There are usually incinerators available in some cities or something like that. They collect the waste from all the universities and they incinerate it. So there is a centralized facility designated for that, and government creates a facility to incinerate these hazardous materials which are collected from different universities in that particular geographical area, and then it is incinerated, usually burned up. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. We are open for discussion. We are open for any questions that you have. I can help you with anything that I am capable of in my capacity. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, sir, for your detailed and informative webinar, for an interesting webinar. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
sir.
If dear participants, if you have any question, you may type it in the chat box or you may raise your hands, please. House is open for the questions and discussion. I think there are, yes.
Hello, Dr. Waqar sir.
Yes, please.
Yes, Dr. Sahab, it was a very present and wonderful presentation. I am very thankful to you for your kind words and kindness for our institution. I have a simple, very simple, not a question, but as just want to have a suggestion from you. That you
Yes,
are
please.
in a very established and a very wonderfully equipped laboratory in Saudi Arabia. And here in Pakistan, we are not, in our institution, we are just getting to establish our laboratories and our institution, especially our chemical laboratories. Now we are going to develop our laboratories. So what would you suggest? What is the easiest and simplest way of starting an established laboratory?
Okay. You mean academic laboratory?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, academic laboratory should be custom built. The first thing you start from a room of the laboratory. Usually what happens is that when we have to start a lab or we need a lab, we try to convert any classroom or any other room into the laboratory. The best thing is when you start custom built. Number one thing is that where all the supplies are there, and it should be built in a way that it is ventilated properly. It is a custom built for a chemistry laboratory. The room or the building has certain standards that you need to follow. And then you need to gradually develop them. You cannot start with the accident laboratory from the beginning. You start from the scratch, of course, and then you start developing it gradually. Every year, for example, with the budget, reinforce your laboratory, reinforce it. And the most important thing is the maintenance of the equipments that are used by the students. And you are aware that what happens is when lot of students use same equipment 2 or 3 times in a day, and it becomes problematic. It doesn't give proper readings. This is a common complaint in our universities, laboratories, that the pH meter, for example, or a conductivity bridge is not giving proper readings. So this is an important phenomena. There should be lab technicians maintaining those equipments all the times. So maintenance of the laboratory is important. There is a gradual development. After that, when you also please go through the standards of the different agencies, as I told you. Pick anyone which is not very expensive, get a certification. When you go for a certification of the laboratory, you do many things which improve your laboratory. Actually, the standards are to improve these laboratories. So once your laboratory is certified by certain agency, your credibility of your college degree increases a lot. Your publications are welcomed more. So gradual development and follow certain standard to get a certification from them.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Thank you very much.
You are welcome anytime.
Over to Almas.
Thank you very much, sir. I think one participant, Farooq Ahmed, has raised his hand. Mr. Farooq Ahmed, if you have any question, you may unmute yourself and ask, please.
Sir, I asking the question how get information about hazard chemical.
Farooq, you can first of all you can search for the material safety data sheet (MSDS) and put the name of that particular chemical, and you will find out lot of information about that. I mean, these days, these information are easily available through the net. So material safety data sheet, download material safety data sheet for that particular chemical. And if you are doing research, for example, you should have and keep them in your lab, all the MSDS relevant to that particular chemical. If you need some help in that, you can always email me and I can send you the material safety data sheet for any particular chemical you need. You can have my email address through my website, or Dr. Aklim Heather can provide my email address to you, and anyone from your university. If you need any literature, any document relevant to that, I will be more than happy to help anyone.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
You are welcome.
Thank you very much, sir. If any participant has a question, you may please raise your hand. I think that's all. Yes, chemistry with Fatima Takvi. Do you have a question? You may unmute yourself. Miss Fatima? Okay, I think there's no any question left. Thank you very much, sir. We are very much pleased to have you here. And it was a very detailed and informative presentation. And I think our students must have gained some information about how to work in a laboratory. And to be a chemist, of course, and to work in the laboratory, we have to follow all these rules and we have to keep in mind. Thank you very much, sir, for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Almas. Thank you very much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.